All right, let's continue that conversation. And Riam, before we talk about the challenges that were posed by James Mwangi in the carbon trading market, a curious viewer wants to know where you're from.
I'm from Egypt, so I'm from the continent.
Okay.
I'm from Africa as well.
Brilliant.
Very glad to be here. This is the second time I'm here.
Okay.
The first time we met during the auction here in Nairobi a couple of months ago. It was the biggest in the history of the market, selling 2.2 million tons. 75% of it came from Africa, from Kenya, Burundi, Rwanda, Egypt, South Africa, Morocco. So we're very happy to be back here again. Great.
And that's the first time the carbon credits auction was happening here, right?
Yes.
Brilliant. So if I have one tree in the village, do I have carbon credits?
Oh, that's a great question to ask. You know, when we started the market back in Saudi Arabia, there was zero supply and zero demand, and we had all sorts of these questions. So awareness is much needed. Well, I will bucket this question into three buckets. The first one, which is the standards. How do I know that what I'm doing is eligible for credits? There are a set of standards over there. The most famous ones are VERA, Gold Standard, and we have the old mechanism by the United Nations called CDM. Around 300 standards are out there.
300?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Tackling different industries, be it tourism, be it cement, hard-to-abate sectors, be it forestation. So it tackles different activities in the economy. And guess what? It's not enough. There are more to be done, more standards to be issued. We need more, and we need to scale more. So you need to know which are you, as your activity, eligible to be in one of these standards or not. This is number one. Okay. Once you know that, you need to validate. So that comes the second bucket, which is the validation, verification bodies. And oh boy, these are expensive ones. And that's why individuals can do it. You need to scale. What does it mean, validation and verification bodies? Is a validator would come and validate that your project is in accordance with the standard, in a very simple terms. And then verification is the auditor that comes and makes sure that this project is in the ground, like what Clarice has meant. What is the problem in that? Here in Africa, and I'm really keen in the African market, is the cost. It's very expensive. We're talking about around $200 per project. So individuals cannot pay that. It needs to be aggregated. So you plant a tree, James plant a tree, Clarice, and Chris, and we add to each other aggregates so we can cover the cost. And there is an opportunity to do it ourselves in the continent rather than having from the global north validation verification bodies. We should own that here in the continent.
So do we have validation and verification bodies here right now?
No. In Africa, there is an attempt by Egyptians to come and audit. They have the expertise to do validation verification. Could it be scaled? This is a question to be asked. So this is the second bucket. The third is issuance. So once that happens, you cannot say, I planted a tree without recording it. You need to record it in the design phase.
In the design phase?
Yes. So history is past. You cannot say,
so
I planted
the trees that are
this
existing
tree,
now can't help me.
No, but you need to have a baseline. And baseline means before the project, what was the emission, and after the project. So you need to prove it historic basis, and then you need to register the project as a project developer in the design phase. One thing that I really like what James has mentioned about what is the purpose of carbon credits. The purpose of it is those projects are uneconomic without carbon credits as a revenue stream to support them economically. So carbon credits is a revenue stream to make these projects economic. Why we do reforestation? Why would we have a kelp farm in the middle of the sea? These is all made available by channeling these funds to scale these projects. So it's very important to understand these concepts.
So essentially, my grandmother, even if she has 6 acres of trees, it doesn't help her now because they're already in existence.
In existence doesn't work.
So you have to plant.
Yes, it's a call for climate action. We need to all act together, and your grandmother needs to talk to her community, and a bigger community need to start reforestation. This is how we make scale, make revenue stream, cover the cost of validation verification body, cover the cost of the project, all in all.
Then who do they go to as an organization? Is there a place, is there a number they can call? Is there a place they go to?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the standards that are out there, it's open for the public. It's Vera Gold Standard. You could Google it, Vera Gold Standard, CDM. The standards are out there.
Yeah.
Validation and verification body, they are very well known. Handful ones that are out there
but
as well.
Expensive also.
This is a problem for African developers, and this is something that the African continent need to own the narrative.
Yeah.
I believe carbon credits is the future for Africa.
Yeah.
I believe that Africa did not contribute to the problem, less than 1% of the emissions, but can contribute to the solution. So rather than playing like what the president has mentioned, the victim, we could be the owner of the solution. We could help and own the problem and help in solving it.
Okay, that's interesting. And that sort of addresses what James was raising, that there's a problem there, challenges that we're facing in the carbon markets. So what do you recommend going forward? Because you're deep into this.
Yes, so there are a lot of challenges in the market. The market size last year on its own was $2 billion. That is not a big market. It was, the amounts traded was 150 million tons, which is the emissions of a country like Algeria.
Yeah.
It's good, but it's not good enough.
Okay.
The market is supposed to grow at 30% per annum in the coming years till 2030. So it's going to be a huge market. Are there challenges? Of course, there are challenges. I'll talk about here in Africa, since we're here in Nairobi, and I'm so happy to be here, honestly. The challenges would be, first of all, integrity. How do we make sure that these projects, like what James and Clarice and Chris mentioned, happen on the ground, are not bogus one? How do we keep the confidence in the market? This is very important, and this is why we welcome the initiative like VCMC coming out for core carbon principles. All of these initiatives that helps in gaining confidence in the market, attracting buyers, are very important. This is a challenge, okay? Another challenge would be financing for Africa, which is a huge challenge. How do we make sure that funds get channeled into Africa? How do we debottleneck that? This is a big problem for Africa, and that's why we are here as RVCMC. We are selling African credits. We're bringing confidence back to the market. This is why we came here in Nairobi to walk the talk, to be on the ground, to show confidence in African credits. We did a lot of work to ensure the integrity. To give you an example, in the auction it was very tough because we didn't want to be accused for greenwashing, so we had 2 independent due diligence teams, not talking to each other separately. Every project we looked at, we compared the result. Any red flag we excluded, and it's a very tough process. So due diligence, integrity is very important. And once there is confidence in African credit, finance should flow, legislation that comes in, clarify for investor what it is, how do we de-risk, how do we avoid some of the African markets coming and saying in the middle of like what we've seen in Zimbabwe. So how do we avoid this? How do we provide confidence for investors to come here in the continent and invest? This is very important.
All right. Let me bring in Clarice on this. And in terms of legislation, does the climate change bill, which is now law since it was signed by the president, does it attempt to address the challenges Riham and James were speaking about?
Yeah. So that bill was passed on Friday. So it's just been 3 days and really just signed by the president. So it has not been tested yet. But what I could say from just a review of what I have seen in the content of the draft is that it does attempt to do so. It does attempt to address those challenges that have been mentioned. So for example, on the issue of integrity and ensuring that we have projects doing what they say they will do and accounting, we have a new offenses and penalties section that is in the bill, or I should call it the act now. And that was not there before. We didn't have specific carbon market offenses and penalties before. So there is offenses like withholding information, knowingly giving false information on your carbon project. There's using carbon projects for money laundering. There are offenses such as understating what you've made in your project. And all these, the offense, I think, is 500 million Kenya shillings or 10 years imprisonment or both, which was in the last draft that I saw. Yeah. So there's that stick element to try and push, carrot and stick. Yeah. That is a stick that is trying to enforce or ensure that the markets go as they should. Okay. But there's also certain sections or certain provisions in that bill that I would say maybe we need to test and see how they actually work in practice. So, for example, Riam has mentioned that it's a very costly affair to come up with a carbon project. Now, the new provisions that we have on benefit sharing set up a certain amount that must go to communities from projects. So, in the case of land-based projects, they have to share 40% of the aggregate earnings per year to community. Where your project is non-land-based, you share 25% of your aggregate earnings, which would be the case of cook stoves, which are non-land-based. Now, the question then becomes, what is aggregate earnings? And it's defined in the piece of legislation, and who is the community. Now, it has not yet been tested. Projects have been sharing. How well they have been doing that has been questioned, but they have been sharing. But now these are strict figures that are now in the law. Before they were doing willing buyer, willing seller sort of arrangements. Okay. So we need to test those provisions and see to what extent do they incentivize or promote investment, or do they lead investment out of Kenya to countries that do not have that sort of legislation.
Okay. So, Chris, how does this affect you? When you talk about 25%, haven't you been giving more than that or less?
Yeah, Trevor, it's as Kerry says, it'll the overall framework of the act is very positive, and it's got a lot of good intentions, and it's designed to try to attract this kind of carbon funding to come into Kenya. And for projects like ours, we're very encouraged because we design our projects from the very beginning to return the majority of the value of the carbon to the community. So for a cook stove project like ours, for instance, we actually will give most of the value of the carbon on day one to the end users of our stoves in the form of a subsidy. So for today, we're distributing around 40,000 stoves a month in Kenya, and many 40,000 a month in Kenya. And another 200,000 or so across other African countries. All of those stoves that are under the carbon project in Kenya, we distribute with a very large subsidy. Sometimes up to 90% of the cost is covered by carbon credits in the form of a subsidy. So for instance, just today, we were visiting some end users of our stoves out in Tigoni, and those end users were able to purchase our wood stove, the Kuniokoa, for around 500 shillings. If we were to just sell it commercially, it would cost around 5,000 shillings. So we've been able to cut 90% of the cost out of the stove on day one for the end user of the stove. So
25% is actually less.
So we were returning much more to the community today. And I think crucially, the beauty of a cook stove project is returning a lot more to the community, but also doing it upfront on day one in a guaranteed way. So the end user of the stove is not, they're not speculating on the carbon market or waiting a long time for the value to, they're experiencing the value on day one by being able to access this clean cook stove that's going to save them fuel and have positive health impacts on their life in a way that they wouldn't have been able to access it otherwise.
But if you're subsidizing more than 90% and now the capping is at 25%, is that a disadvantage to the people?
Well, we're trying to do what we think is the right way to run the project. So Burn is a social enterprise. Our whole mission is founded on the principles of saving lives and forests. So we're really driven by the mission to produce the very best cook stoves, and then that we know can actually reduce the use of firewood or eliminate it. And then we need to make sure that people can actually access and use those stoves. So we're doing what we think we need to do to make sure people can use them.
So where do people access them? And I see Riam as
May I ask you a question? Do you think that would raise up the cost to the end user? So you said it's 500 shilling. With that 25%, do you think that would end up with a markup to the end user to be able
Well, we don't, as Kerry said, kind of alluded to, we don't yet know how the act will actually take shape in terms of actual policy that governs our day-to-day actions. It's brand new still.
New,
So our hope is that when the definition of community benefit will be broad enough to adequately capture this subsidy to begin with, so that there will be no additional cost to the end user. If it's not, then for sure, that cost, unfortunately, the end user would have to bear the additional cost.
All right. Gladys, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on the issue of the 25%, 40%, and whether it's now too low. The issue is it's not a ceiling, it's a floor. So
it's a minimum.
It's a minimum. So projects are open to really give much more.
Can go
and
up
actually,
to
it would be beneficial for projects to actually give as much as they can, because the demand for the carbon credits or carbon offsets is really, it's a competitive market. And increasingly, the buyers are very sophisticated and very aware of the need for monitoring human rights, community benefits. Was there free, prior, informed consent? How much are they gaining? So because buyers are that attuned to this kind of issues, they're increasingly demanding that what they're buying needs to be really of a very high standard. And the reason for this is that in the developed world, we're seeing a lot of greenwashing claims coming against those companies when they make claims on carbon offsetting and that we're now carbon neutral. When they make such claims, they're being increasingly questioned by the citizens and the consumers in their countries. And for that reason, you don't want to be challenged, yet you have paid money for offsets. So there is really a race for carbon offsets that are of very high quality. And one of the ways you can ensure your quality is really top-notch is by ensuring that even your community benefits really are top-notch.
All right. So just for clarity purposes, greenwashing is just a process of conveying false impression or misleading information about how a company's products are environmentally sound, just for my grandmother's purposes. But let me bring in James on this. So you talked about the challenges yourself. What do you recommend going forward?
So I think a lot has been said by my very knowledgeable co-panelists about some of the levers that we can pull, right? So we're starting to pay real attention to delivering benefit to the community. And one of the things that I'm hoping viewers are picking up is carbon credits is not just about going out and planting trees. When you think about the ways that we interact with greenhouse gases every day, there's opportunities everywhere in how you farm, in how you build your house, in how you transport yourself, and so on and so forth. In each of these spaces, if you can identify the right standard, or if an entrepreneur can identify the right standard and design a good product and set a good baseline, then you can generate a carbon project. Very often, the way that you will experience the value of the carbon project as a consumer is not necessarily a check to you, but a subsidy to move you from a high-emitting, usually less attractive product to a more attractive, more climate-positive product. So suddenly you see the thing, that fancy electric car that you said I'll never be able to, or that electric boda that you thought you'll never be able to afford, suddenly gets cheaper. Or that electric solar irrigation system becomes cheaper than the diesel alternative. That's a benefit being delivered to you via the carbon markets to allow you to irrigate your crops at the same price or a lower price than the old nasty diesel pump that you need to refuel.
All right.
Now, having said that, right? So we're talking about those benefits. The obvious levers that we can pull are also lying in plain sight. The first one is this work of measurement, reporting, and verification of these projects. There is no rocket science here. We have young people trained in the appropriate sciences. We have, we have experience of various forms of auditing and so on. In India, you're seeing an explosion of firms that are specializing in carrying out these activities. And what that does is it creates an enabling environment for more of the value of the credit to be captured in country. Remember what I said about very little of the value sometimes getting to the country and to the community? A lot of that is just a function of who has to do the work because we haven't set ourselves up to go out there and, why shouldn't a Kenyan go to Taveta to check that indeed that community is conserving the way they said they were going to conserve? And those are jobs, a new set of very high quality jobs. The other thing we need to do is think about how do we begin to tell the story of our credits to the market in a way that starts to drive up their price, make them more attractive. Remember, in the voluntary market, you're playing in the reputation economy, right? Companies are saying, I want to be able to attach my carbon spending to something that makes me look really good. And that involves designing projects that really tell a real story and deliver real impact. And again, there's room for Kenyans to step forward, and Africans all over the continent, to step forward and design projects that make sense in their own communities and bring them to the market. Once the developers share and the MRV share are sitting in the country, suddenly the amount of value from carbon markets that's being captured in Africa will grow substantially.
Brilliant. Enough to take a quick break on that note. When we come back, I'm talking about some business news, and then we continue the conversation. I'll get into your questions also in just a bit. So keep them coming at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. See you shortly.